This Room Rumble was one I probably should have uploaded a couple of days ago, but it was one from Amy's, um, where the first half, or just over half actually, of the stream was sort of talking about this video, and I can link the video for you about how whether aliens are in fact demons coming to get us, and I've seen a lot of this around, that the UFOs are housing the armies of hell or something. I don't know. But sort of halfway through, our friend Ultimated Judeo-Christian came in and sort of just did his thing. I wondered whether I'd upload this or not, but I'm going to. Yeah, I'm going to. I'm guilty. I'm going to. Just because it was the weirdest question that caught him off. The question that he couldn't answer, or didn't even. He seemed absolutely stumped on it. And that was me trying to use empathy, because every time you sort of say, okay, well, let's discuss your concept of a god, he says, well, you discussing it means you accept it, that you're presupposing the god in order to discuss it. So to try and use empathy, I sort of said, well, how would you receive it if I said, I'll discuss your god, but you must deny God in order to do so? And for some reason, he seemed absolutely bewildered towards the end. I don't know why, but again, it's that weird combination of sort of word salad and just more or less just real belligerent unsupported claims from Ultimated. I usually don't get into it, but I think that somebody called Tsunami wanted to get him on his, because if you don't know it, this is a man that claims to have a physical, sexual relationship with a god. So trying to get him on that subject and say, hey, let's talk more about that, because we've heard tons of claims about gods, but certainly not, that he's my lover kind of thing. So that was interesting. So yeah, we tried to get him on that. He would not go down that road. He seemed really flighty and dodgy. I did have to go at the end, but I thought I'd just upload this for your viewing amazement, enjoyment. I don't know what you get out of these. I certainly had a laugh afterwards. And certainly the weirdest thing, he usually will belligerently not accept or not like give one sentence answers to anything you put to him, but this one he seemed genuinely stumped on, so it was kind of interesting. I also have an announcement that I'm making a sort of side channel to do gaming on. So if you do like gaming, and you do like me, like gaming, and like me, like dinosaurs, we're going to have an Ark survival playthrough with a whole load of people, with Dr. Dino and Ozian, you might have seen him on Modern Day Debate, and Viper, who was on Modern Day Debate once. So we're kind of having a bit of a go of that, and I will be streaming to start off with at the usual aimbot times to replace that on the other channel. But I'll link the channel down below, so if you are interested, give it a look, see what you think. But until I see you there, let's get ready.
Mark Reid,
Maybe
welcome
Witsit
aboard.
made it with
Hello, Mark.
With his advanced understanding of the physics, Austin Witsit
He's using the
driving
ether,
the-
and
Right,
it's like
right.
it's just electro something. He's got all these orbs flying around.
Hello, beautiful people. It's so good to see you. Yeah, I sort of quickly looked this up at the back. So this is a whistleblower, right? This is a Grush is the name of the guy. David Grush. He's a former intelligence official who led an analysis of UAP within a US defense agency. And this has prompted an investigation into his allegations, right?
Yeah.
One thing I find interesting is this article says that he got an Air Force scholarship in physics, but it doesn't say anything about him ever completing a degree in it.
And he's never really worked in the areas that you would expect him to have the knowledge over. So he's worked in various places, but not in not in the areas you would expect them to have worked. So he didn't oversee these things himself. He didn't retrieve them. He didn't sort of work in any of these areas. He's just talked to people about it.
Right.
Now, I don't know where these, where he's gotten these things from. And he says that there's a sophisticated disinformation program targeting the US populace to suppress information on UFOs. But he said, and this is talking to a newspaper called Le Parisien, a French newspaper for some reason, that some of the craft were football field sized.
Yeah, various sizes and shapes.
Yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to cover up a football field sized alien craft.
Okay, I have to say something about that. I don't want
Yeah.
to sound like a fucking lunatic, but I live very close to MacDill Air Force Base, and I have seen... I don't want to sound like a lunatic.
It's okay.
I have seen... I absolutely have seen something... This just makes me sound like a fucking crazy person. I absolutely have seen something in the sky that was, I would say, probably about, football field
Very
in
large.
length. And
Very large, okay.
it was during a party. There were a bunch of people there. Everybody freaked the fuck out. This was when I was a teenager. And there was no explanation for it. We never figured out. There was nothing in the news. There was nothing from MacDill. There's just nothing ever said about it. And it's just kind of something that I just put out of my memory for a long time.
And there's nothing wrong with that, Tsunami. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that a lot of people would jump to it's an alien craft instead of we don't know what it is.
Well,
right?
that's what I think everybody at the party thought, that because they literally all ran inside and hid. And
right.
I was just like, you guys realize we're right next to MacDill Air Force Base. So if that's from anywhere, it's probably from MacDill. It's probably related to our own military.
I have heard that MacDill is one of the proposed locations where these craft could be stored. The ARVs, as he calls them, ARVs
UAPs.
Reverse it. Yeah. ARVs is what they're calling the ones that we built based on alien technology. They call it alien reproduction. Right. Again, very speculative. We haven't seen any of them yet. Yeah. But if what he's saying is true, we have craft that are of alien origin, and then we have some that we've made ourselves based on that technology.
Now we probably just made them ourselves.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I know that the US, because there was a craft called and I'm struggling with my memory, but it was like the Avro craft that the Canadian government originally did, and they sold it to the US. The US was working on this craft, and it looked like a flying saucer, essentially. That's what it looked like. It straight up just looked like a flying saucer. And the American government didn't quash the UFO rumors because it was in their best interests. Mm-hmm. Because people seeing this thing would just talk about UFOs and not actually give away this project they're working on. I mean, I can show you the sort of schematics for it, even like how they and it worked kind of, it sort of could get off the ground and hover around kind of thing. Nothing like we would see, but this is sort of
they're on display at multiple Air Force museums in the US, and I think that the craft that they have on display and the schematics that they've released are they're just really early versions of what they actually are using. And I do think that flying saucers are a real thing, and it's the same thing. It's just those are early versions and early schematics of what we actually are using now. And it's not aliens. It's once again, I think that it's our Air Force.
Well, I think it's what they can produce. You know, if someone produces a football field-sized craft, I'm going to go, yeah, we probably didn't put that technology together ourselves, or at least I'd have to be convinced that we put that technology together ourselves, because that's impossible according to our own, you know, aeronautics kind of, you know, the way we understand it works. But it depends, you know, it really does depend.
So that saucer that you mentioned, I mean, we know the means of propulsion for that. It's conventional. We understand it. It's I don't think it's a very good candidate for the UAPs that seem to have a different mode of propulsion.
Hear me out. I mean, you sort of said there was no obvious means of propulsion for these things. And what I'm saying is this has no obvious means of propulsion. Let me show you the schematic on this thing. Because it's been declassified, right? This is a declassified thing. So it used to be top secret. And sort of...
Go for it.
They say it didn't work out. But, you know, in saying it didn't work out, did it? Is this just the old version? And it's very, very... kind of simple. This is the actual schematic. If you want to share it, wait,
pulling it up.
Can you share it? Share my thing. Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Yep. So all of this is internal, right? You can't actually see any of these engines. It's all internal, and that's how it works. Like so according to the observer, this thing's just a disc. That's all it is. There's no obvious means of propulsion anywhere on the thing.
But you would see heat trails from it. It would be putting out heat, right?
Well, I don't know. Like, it depends on what's powering it that we're talking about, kind of thing. Like, presumably, you should be able to see heat, unless, you know, you have some way to mask that heat. Because there is ways to deal with heat from engines and machines. You can use heat sinks, you can use cooling systems, you can use any kind of number of different techniques to like stop heat from coming out. The question is
on it. Do you know where that? Excuse me. Do you know where that ends up?
An exhaust vent
or exhaust duct. It's like the top left thing that it labels on the.
Oh yeah, I don't know where that ends up. I really don't. I don't know that much about it, but I've seen these things go, and yeah, and this is a very, very primitive kind of, you know, schematic for it. I would imagine that, you know, if anybody tried to put this into practice, it would be incredibly more complicated. I guess I'm just using it as an example of where the US government wouldn't squash UFO rumors if it was working on something like this. It would go, no, aliens, yes, you go away. And they might even suggest aliens themselves, like sort of leak a few things to basically throw people off the scent. Like, if people are believing in aliens, they're not going to be investigating our little, you know, flying discs project here. So why wouldn't you let that sort of, that rumor run around the block a bit?
I agree with that. I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It makes sense in a way. Also, though, I mean, I think just coming out with that, you're just calling attention to the program, and you know, a lot of people are going to come to the same conclusion that you've came to. That it may not be aliens, but it could be, you know, a government. They could have a craft that sort of fits that bill. I just don't think they would acknowledge it at all. I think they would just act like nothing's there, and anybody who sees anything is crazy. But they might. I guess I could imagine them spreading rumors if people did notice something. But
especially it's people that are believable, like pilots or something like that, right? So if it's somebody that you know is in a job that is sort of, you need to be reliable and stable, that, you know, that's probably I don't know. It's just, the whole point is that we do not know, and I'm certainly not saying it is. It definitely is some sort of military vehicle, and it's not some sort of alien craft, because I don't know that. But what I'm saying is that when you have this thing of we don't know what this thing is, sort of going aliens is those two claims of we don't know what this is and alien they can't exist together. You either know what it is and it's aliens, or you don't know what it is.
You cannot know and be open to the possibility. I don't think you could dogmatically say that it is. But the whole thing here is the whistleblower report says that he does have inside information. Again, we haven't seen what he said. It might turn out to be nothing. Who knows? But that's the claim, is that he does have knowledge that these are alien craft, not secret military projects. Whether that's true or not.
It's like if it's a forest and all of the locals are saying there's Bigfoot in the forest. Like, even if you don't believe in Bigfoot, you might still be more afraid to go into the forest than you would if there wasn't this giant folklore about it. So I could see where the military having the craft would think other countries would say, whoa, they're saying that there's that in the US, and like maybe it is military and maybe we shouldn't mess with them. You know what I mean? Like I could see that being a deterrent maybe.
Well, and there's a lot of other another whole bunch of problems is that the way that sort of these top secret projects work, some of the time they will split off something that they're trying to reverse engineer. Like they'll find a technology from another country, like they'll find a Chinese something or other or something like that, and they'll split it off so no one group is working on the entirety of it. They're just working on, say, compartmentalize it so that prevents information from leaking about what you're actually working on. The problem comes that the people working on it might go, oh, this is totally technology that doesn't fit into anything we know. And if somebody comes to that conclusion, because they don't have the whole thing, they might come to that conclusion because they don't know what they're actually working on, which is a problem.
Just like with AI, I think, I'm working on this aspect of what Google does. And so I might, assume based off of the little peek into the full picture that I have, like what's going on in the other departments or something like that. Right. Like, or what the AI actually does. But we can only know for sure, like what I'm actually working on in that assembly line.
Well, so the claim that these are alien craft, and that's based on my knowledge of it from actual astrophysicists who have examined this material and said this is not native to the Earth. It came from somewhere else. Based on the isotopes and the elemental composition, that you would not find this material on Earth. That's where the claim that it's alien comes from, as opposed to just like, we don't understand this technology. I can't imagine humans having it, so it must be aliens. I don't think that's the thought process. But
yeah, I agree. I think again, like, especially if they come out like as a result of this whistleblower and say, here's this truth of it, right? And show some evidence of that. And if they confirm like here's our evidence to why we do or don't think it's, people or China or whatever they insert the blank with. I think like right now it's like we have like evidence is I forget that dude's name, but the guy who's been on like Joe Rogan a few times, maybe, who was saying like, yes. So I think he's an example where, just like from a religious standpoint, like that testimony itself, we need some supernatural evidence behind that in order to just take his word for it. So I think if they could produce like when we're looking at this, this is definitely like, here's what humans came up with, and we know the source of it, assuming it is declassified and all that stuff, which I'm, doing. Like, so we know that humans came up with this shape and this system and blah, blah, blah. But if there's evidence that there's craft out there, that we also have evidence from the government that they're like, yep, no idea. I think that's where we could start to eliminate the government kind of like, is it error? And even then it might still be the Bigfoot scenario where it's like, let's keep the myth going for whatever.
Well, the problem also comes that sort of if the government has, like, if you go to the sort of extremes of these conspiracy theories where, you know, the reptoids are in charge kind of thing, you're never going to be able to convince people by doing internal investigations kind of thing. That will never happen because they'll just say, oh, well, the government's just still covering it up kind of thing. So I don't think this will change. Even if they find nothing, I don't think that will change, you know, the UFO people's minds in the slightest. I think they will just say, well, that's what you would expect from a government that is run by the, you know, lizard people or whoever. So it would be amazing if it was confirmed. That would be insanely frightening and awesome, I guess. You know, I don't see any reason to think it's demons, you know, so there's the, you know, because this is technically is the alien demons, like, no.
Well, like that's what you're seeing on a lot of like the comment sections for videos about this is Christians in there saying, oh yeah, it's demons, and
right
as the explanation, which obviously we don't concur with, but we got Disciple Day in the back. Let me bring
okay.
Unless it's going to turn into a to serve man situation, I don't really see it as that scary.
Well, I think serve. What do you mean serve man?
That I was referencing that. I think it's
Simpsons
show, Twilight Zone episode where I think it's a Twilight Zone episode where the aliens are making first contact, and there's like a book that they have, and like we can't figure out what it says, and we can't figure out like what the language is, and they're like trying to get everybody to like come back to the planet with them and pretending like they're really friendly, and like somebody finally at like the very end of the episode, somebody finally deciphers like what the book says, and it's a cookbook, and it's to serve man. That's like the ending of the episode.
Cooking humans.
Cookbook.
Like
I think they did a parody of that on
humans.
The Simpsons.
Probably. It's a really well-known episode of
okay.
I'm sure it's a Twilight Zone.
Well, I mean, so this is the question, like, what do you think that their intention would be if there were aliens here? I would find it hard pressed to think that they wouldn't be after resources. Like, why? I would like to think that any sort of sufficiently superior species to be able to cross the vast, unimaginable distance of the galaxy to see humans would be more advanced to just destroy us for our resources. But there's always the chance to destroy us for our resources. You know, that does seem to be something humans have engaged in the past. So
we would just
if they were
have
after
to hope.
resources, why would they even make contact with like the Western world at all? Wouldn't they just go straight to like Africa and India and like?
But,
seems...
You know, I don't think there's anything physical on the Earth that you couldn't get from an uninhabited planet aside from human Earth life. That seems to be the only thing that you wouldn't be able to find elsewhere without worrying about populations.
Well, I mean, I guess water isn't exactly, you know, liquid water isn't exactly flowing elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
Maybe we could trade them some oil for some water or something. And
they're not Americans.
Start up the trade.
They're not. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would hope that a race that advanced would have, well, like I was saying before, you see the difference in how we look at native peoples today versus the approach we took centuries ago, which often turned out to be catastrophic. Yeah, some of us centuries ago that turned out to be catastrophic. So you'd hope that if they were advanced enough that they would have gone through that period in their history and learned from it, and not be so not be inclined to take that route.
Or yeah, I mean, and maybe that's the case. Like I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
How you doing, Chris?
Yeah.
I'm doing well, thank you. This is sure fun. What a fascinating subject. Hi,
Yeah,
Mark.
man.
Hi, Tsunami. Hi, Sam. Hi, James. It's fascinating as a skeptic, because I'm a skeptic. I always think, what do we know? And I know one thing, and that's unfortunate, but we know people lie, right? We know people exaggerate. We know they jump to conclusions. We know they're prone to superstitions. So in my head, all those possibilities come in first and foremost when something like this happens. Not that I'm excited to investigate it and see where it leads. And I'll just say really quickly, as a Christian, I'd say if it is a demon, it's not a biblical one. That wouldn't be the biblical picture of a demon, at least in my understanding of one. So if it comes in some kind of alien spacecraft, I just wouldn't see how I'd biblically identify it as a demon. But again, I find it interesting and a fun discussion, and I think, hopefully we'll get some information, and no matter what information we get, it'll be up for debate, right? If they come out and say aliens, there are going to be people who believe it and people who don't. If they come out and say it was government technology, there'll be people who believe it and think it's a cover-up, right? You're going to get both sides on everything. And so that's why we can have fun, because it really doesn't matter what comes out. People are going to still have the opinion they want to have. Right? I think that's bears truth. Because, the government could come out tomorrow and say, no, it was a balloon, and people go, it's a cover-up, or whatever it may be.
Right.
And people can come out and say it's aliens, and the people who don't want to believe in aliens will say, well, they're covering up some new technology. So it's
spaces like this where people, I think, are willing to engage with either argument and see which one's better. You know what I mean? So I think outside of spaces like this, there are people who have made up their mind years ago.
Your hardcore skeptics who would never believe it no matter what. An alien ship would have to land on their roof and they still wouldn't believe it. And then on the other side, you've got people who believe anything. Just about any claim that's made, they won't question it. They'll believe it. And I like to think we operate somewhere in the middle there, usually, where we are open to evaluating information, but realizing that there's a lot we don't know.
Well, I think if the government comes out and says that they're real, that, it's not like I believe everything the government says, but I don't see a lot of useful reason to them saying that aliens exist when they don't, right? So I don't think if they are doing some secret technology, I don't think the misinformation campaign, when you release it, and don't take credit for it, right? That kind of thing would make sense, but not sort of that kind of deliberately going out and saying, yes, we have confirmed this thing exists, because they're well aware of the capabilities of the scientific community to find out the truth. And then all they've done is just completely destroy their own credibility. I just don't see why they would do that. I don't get a good reason why they'd do that.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm just saying I'd imagine there are people who would. Who knows? I just don't know. I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about, this particular incident or what exactly brought all this on. I always find it odd statements like, I think James made one. It wasn't his statement, but that they found something that they say, well, this couldn't be from Earth.
That's what the astrophysicists were saying.
Those
materials.
Those statements are confusing to me, because the one thing we know for sure is they found it on Earth. That's what we know for sure, right?
Well, couldn't originate on Earth.
Well, I know. But how do we know? I don't know how we actually can determine that, because we don't know anything exists on Earth until we discover it, really.
I believe that I'm not a physicist, but it has to do with the elemental composition, the isotopes, that you would not find this material on Earth based on the isotopes. They would have had to go through space at some point.
I think I understand the principle of it. I'm just not sure I totally understand. Again, I'm not denying it. I'm just saying I don't totally understand the conclusion.
But, could we find a way that it looked like it wasn't from the Earth, but it actually was? Yeah, I guess that's possible. You can't.
Well, that sounds like a claim that somebody made that has no basis in reality.
Oh, I mean,
well, I think it just needs supernatural evidence. Like if I could see the isotopes and like you could run that experiment with me there, or there was a like video of that experiment, like I think that would be different than like a whistleblower level of like, because that's almost like biblical testimony to me of like it's still just someone's word at the end of that day until there's the demonstration. Well, and so I think the off of Earth claim, I agree with Disciple Day that would be extraordinary since we found it here. So we would I would just need the isotope or all of that like shown to me in order to be convinced of that one.
I can't explain it because I'm not a physicist, but that's just based on what I've read.
It essentially have to be proven, again, not that this would be my standard of believing, and I'm not saying that, but it essentially would have to be proven that it couldn't be replicated. Because if you found it and then it could be replicated on Earth, some means, then you couldn't absolutely ascertain, well, this could not have come from Earth because you could replicate it. So in other words, so it could be,
I think a technology could come from somewhere other than Earth and be replicated on Earth. I don't.
Well, me too. But I don't think you could then definitively say the technology did not come from Earth. Because
it's not necessarily the technology; it's the material that.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and that's where I think, if you could like whatever that thing is, like saying here it is, and here's the test, and it's almost like when someone's like, "Is your chain real?" and then they pull out the little like diamond thing, right, and then see it click, and so they have to see it up then, otherwise they're like, it could be fake jewelry, right?
I feel like for an allegation like that to even be made, they would have to have done a level of reverse engineering at this point that I don't think, like, this just sounds like the most ridiculous fucking bullshit. I'm sorry, like I feel like this is ridiculous to even entertain this. It's interesting that it's the first time in our country's history that one of our past presidents has ever been indicted on fucking 40 plus felony charges in federal court and another 30 something charges. Like it's interesting that this bullshit is coming out right now. Like this is once again, I have to say this is just smoke and mirrors. It's filled with the most vague little pepperings of somewhat scientific talk with no real basis in reality, and it's just oh god, it's meant to appeal to people that do not have like the scientific background to actually like look at this immediately off the bat and say, this is bullshit. What does that even mean? The isotopes are not present on Earth, and like this sounds ridiculous. This sounds ridiculous. I feel like I'm a creationist right now. Like, this is like something like something that my crazy ex would be like sitting and like ranting and being like, oh my god, the aliens are here, disclosed TV has finally like proven themselves, or like some shit. Like this all sounds like it has zero basis in reality. Some guy just fucking said, oh, well, I found these documents and I talked to these people. People have been doing this for years. I talked to this person that's an astrophysicist, and I talked to this chemical engineer, but they themselves have no fucking background in any of these fields. Lo and behold, that they have they've never worked in any field of like no department in the United States Air Force that they are going to be involved in this. And it's just, anybody can come out and say, just make shit up, I feel like.
You're entitled to be hyper skeptical. That's like,
well, I don't think it's hyper skeptical. I think that the time for believing some of this stuff is when the evidence has been demonstrated, and that hasn't been done. And it's interesting that it's a guy that sort of led an investigation on it, and he says that he had people approach him and sort of tell him this stuff, but we don't know where that evidence has come from either. And I think it's good that Congress is actually looking into it, because he says that it's an illegal program operating without Congress oversight, which is incredibly illegal. That is illegal.
Wow. And that's the thing is that it usurps the Congress and the president.
That's what concerns me more, that you can have some sort of program operating without any kind of official oversight whatsoever, basically on its own. That's what worries me more. But the time for believing that he's got something is when they actually have something. I got to agree with Tsunami. It's kind of, until it's been shown to be true, it's better not to believe it, because if you believe things that aren't shown to be true, you have to believe all kinds of wacky things.
Totally.
It depends on your standard of evidence. If you have evaluated it and said, I think it's unlikely, so therefore I require absolute proof, then you'll wait for the absolute proof. If you think it's possible and you're willing to entertain it before you get absolute proof,
I think it's kind of a supernatural.
So that's kind of a hang on. That's a shifting of the goalpost. I never said absolute proof. I think that's a bit, I think you're misrepresenting the standard of evidence that I sort of put up. So when I say some reliable evidence, I'm not talking about absolute proof.
I think you
it's just
said you want to see the material, like you want to see the craft, which would be the smoking gun.
I never said that. I said that it's good that Congress is investigating it. I said that, I think the time to believe it is when there is good evidence for it. I never said I'd have to see the material.
That was me. I was just saying, like, for me to accept that it came from a different planet, I would need the evidence, like, that those physicists described, and to be able to understand that, like, for me personally to like accept that, unless it was like out there public and like a whole bunch of stuff and there were a bunch of professionals who had like unless the evidence really drew me there, I do
there are
think,
scientific things we don't understand that the experts do, and
we want a full exhibition. We want to see the alien bodies on display. We want to see the whole craft schematics laid out. We want the blueprints.
Yeah, I just want some like supernatural evidence. You know what I mean? I want it to be like in my hands or something, like, and then I would be like, "You got it, 100% on that." Like, otherwise, I think it is possible that it's, like Trump drama, and that's where I think again, like, if they decide to arrest him, that's probably when they would say one way or another, look, we did our investigation. Here's what we found out about all this stuff, right? Like, I think that they try to pair some of the news, you know what I mean? So that it's like kind of hedge the bets against like the Trump drama.
Well, I think there's overwhelming evidence that Trump should have been locked up years ago. I mean, he was found guilty from stealing from his own charity, and unlike what would happen to literally anybody else in that position, he was forced to repay what he stole and return things, and then he was barred from using a charity again because he literally took paintings and stuff from his own charity. Had that been any other normal person, they would have been locked up in jail for stealing from a charity, but not Trump. So, I think that there is a lot of evidence that Trump probably needs to have some sort of, there's already evidence that he's a criminal. But that's not.
I don't think anybody's trying to cover for him, though. I mean, I really.
Oh yeah.
Would be doubtful that the mainstream media, which doesn't like him, would, try to concoct this story at this time so people wouldn't think about him. I don't think they would go out of their way to do that.
I think connecting alien spacecraft sightings to Trump indictments is a stretch for sure. But I can't imagine, and not that they don't exist, that's not what I mean, but I can't imagine anyone trying to argue that Trump is not a criminal, even if they don't agree with the particular charges he's facing. I mean, he was president of the country, but I wouldn't let him babysit my kids. It's just, I mean.
What we're seeing right now, I think, is the Republicans want to knock him off. The Democrats hate him. The Republicans, most of them, at least at the top anyway, really don't like him. They had to play ball with him because he had the support of a lot of the party. But I think this is kind of them.
Yeah.
This is them.
I think he's too hard to control. I think they thought they could control him, and they can't. He's a loose cannon, so. Yeah.
But I think trying to connect crazy stuff. Anything going on with him to alien sightings is probably, again, would require evidence just as much as the aliens themselves require evidence.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's fun to think. I mean, that's an interesting thought. But I don't know that there's really any reason to actually believe that.
if there's one person I think is wearing a human suit, I think it's Trump, quite frankly. So, there you go.
Yeah, he may be the best.
That's true.
Want to go on the record right now and sort of say maybe him or what's his name, the Meta guy, Zuckerberg.
But there's one thing somebody brought up, that this guy, has credentials, and I know he does some sort of government.
Yeah.
But there's one weird thing I've just personally noticed over time is credentials can make people more qualified. That's the point, but they don't make them any less human. And so someone who carries a credential, again, certainly they're more qualified in their field than I would be or you would be if they're credentialed, but they're also human. And so they're not necessarily, based on their credentials alone, less prone to deception, less prone to being deceived, less prone
certainly
to
fallible.
Yeah, certainly fallible. And again,
fallible.
So and sometimes we can look at the credential and then automatically just say, well, that makes it legitimate. And again, that hasn't panned out for me, at least. In my experience with the world, that you can automatically accept something
at least in the supernatural,
just with anything.
For UFO.
I don't know this, so I'm literally asking you guys. I actually don't know much about him, but doesn't Kent Hovind have some sort of degree?
No,
not really.
Not legitimate.
Degree,
no, he doesn't. Okay, I didn't know.
In grifting.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't.
It's a mail order degree from mail order diploma.
Okay, but again, it's just this idea. I think there was a funny, I don't know if it's still out there. There was a funny thing. I think it was on Netflix that was, they kind of would test different random things on people. It was like 100 people or so. I forgot what it was, so I don't want to say. But one thing that was really interesting was, and I think of it when I see Mark here, is they had a lady give a speech. I remember this, and I don't remember the exact details, but it was something like this. They had a lady give a speech, and it was the same lady, and she was an actress. And she gave the speech in like kind of a hillbilly Southern accent. And she gave the exact same speech with a eloquent British or some sort of accent. Like, again, I'm not 100% sure. And the idea was then they polled the people and said, how many of you guys think that she was smart and made a lot of sense and had good points? And literally identical speech given by the same woman with two different accents. And of course, the hillbilly or whatever you want to call it accent, they're like, this lady's, no, we didn't think she was very bright and she didn't make much sense. And the exact same speech given by the same lady using the authoritative British accent or the beautiful accent, and they're like, this is a lady you can trust and learn from.
What are you trying to say about me here?
Mark's not
listen,
British.
Mark, I'm not talking about you. I've heard you talk a lot, and I'm just humbled by your.
He likes your voice, man.
But it was just fascinating the way.
People are not objective.
The idea I got from it, was so many factors come into what and who we believe, so much that even voice plays a role. If I were on here now being like, hey guys, aliens ain't true, and you may have a little different opinion, even though I'm saying the same thing. Again, this isn't just my perspective. This is at least in the very small group study on a Netflix TV show. So I'm conceding that off the bat. But I thought it was interesting. I thought there was at least some merit to it. And again, the point being, I think I'm including myself in this, is we think, well, we just go where the evidence goes. And I don't know if that's true, completely true for any of us.
But we're not totally objective.
We try to.
Yeah, we try to.
Best British accents on people. Yes, we certainly sublime to the intentionality of the tone of one's voice.
Yeah, and just the way people phrase things can make a difference. And like I said, credentials, we immediately maybe raise them up in status. And again, not that we totally shouldn't, but it's just interesting to me. Like if I let me tell you something. If I had been probed by an alien, I'm believing this report. The standard of evidence has changed for me on whether this is alien spacecraft because I've been probed by an alien.
I don't think the standard of evidence has changed. I think you just have different access to different evidence than I do, right? Like my standard of evidence would be the same, but if I physically encountered aliens, that would meet my standard of evidence, right?
No, I'm saying in this particular spacecraft, though. So I'm not certainly if I believe I was probed, I believe in aliens.
A little green man, or can you just see the craft?
I didn't hear what you said or who. No, sorry, Tsunami.
Say it again, Tsunami.
When Mark says meet the aliens, does he mean physically meet the little green men, or do you just have to see?
Well, I presume if you're probed, you would have met them first. I mean, having dinner and a movie would be better, Tsunami, but, I presume you meet them.
God damn it, Mark.
At least come into contact with them. Well, it's interesting to look back at.
I'd hate to think they shove a probe up my ass and I don't get to meet them. Like that would just suck. That would be the worst.
They better text. They better not. Call no show after that.
So if you look back in terms of like political science, you look at the 1960 presidential election, Richard Nixon versus John F. Kennedy, and the debate, the main debate that they had was really illustrative because people who listened to the debate on the radio thought Nixon killed Kennedy. They thought his answers were better. He clearly won the debate. People who watched it on television thought Kennedy won the debate because of his appearance and mannerisms. Richard Nixon, he looked like he was not comfortable. He looked like he was stressed out, agitated. And it was a completely different perspective based on how you observe the media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use all of our senses like in different ways to decide how we think about things. I think like smell is very associated to memory, for example. So
sure.
But at the end of the day, so Bob Lazar came out with claims in the 1980s. All he had were claims. He claimed he had physical evidence. He refused to provide it. And that was kind of just it. You had to take him at his word for it or not. He wasn't willing to, provide what evidence he said he had. He was concealing it, which whether he had it or not, I guess we'll never know because he didn't show it. But this seems to be a little different because beneath the surface of all this is a claim that there is actual verifiable evidence. So all I can say is let's see where it goes. We can't. Let's see if it pans out. It might not. It might. But just keep an open mind and be ready for either way. Well, yes, Umami Kennedy was, people thought he looked a lot better. Same thing with the Bill Clinton versus George H.W. Bush election. Mm-hmm. They thought Clinton was sexy. So they voted for him. Because people are not objective.
Yeah, that's before they knew the sort of stuff that it was doing in the background, though. That's the thing. You've got to keep that in mind. And there's like, he could play the saxophone and stuff like that. He was very...
I forgot about this.
Yeah, he used to play the saxophone on like the thing. I mean, I was pretty young at the time, but, I still remember, like, he'd put on the shades, right? The sort of dark shade, jazz shades, and, like, grab the saxophone in a suit. And like women were going crazy over him.
It's true. Clinton was, even as a little kid, I thought he was cool. Like I thought Clinton was cool. Like I was like, oh, the president is like, the president is so cool. He's not like freaking like, what we have.
He doesn't act like an old guy like character. He goes to McDonald's.
Kind of thing.
He smoked pot without inhaling. Remember that?
Right, yeah, that's not very cool. But, Obama rode that skateboard in that thingo. Like, he was actually, like, I went, wow, that's pretty cool.
He more connected with the younger generation.
Oh, sure. Don't get me wrong. And, he's got a notable lack of putting things in other women's asses. But, like, that's just aside the point.
So, how do you do,
like,
fellow
still
kids?
In love with Obama. Sorry.
Obama was a champ. Like, what a guy. I swear to God, it's just, I think I feel really sorry for him. He never found that white whale of addressing the gun violence issue. He never could do anything, and that's sad. That was his,
I thought he took all the guns away, but that's just, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
That was an attempt, anyway.
See, that's the thing with this whole whistleblower thing. It's like we are in the middle of like probably the most extreme state that our country has been in since like the Civil War, or pretty much.
You think
the Civil
so?
War. Like we are.
I don't think that's true.
Honestly, in a tenuous state at this point. Abortion has been taken away. Like we have our infrastructure is crumbling. We just had a president that's been indicted on felony charges. Like there's things are so fucked up. There's so many mass shootings every fucking day. It's
so,
a very
Mummy,
convenient like thing to.
It's a real worry, but I don't think, like, you have to remember that just, for 50 years ago and stuff, there was stuff like union busting. Like, companies would hire people with clubs to literally go down and beat the crap out of people on strike. Yeah, they were literally busting in heads of union members. Like, I don't
people
think
being in the South, was
right.
not an uncommon occurrence.
Right. So I really think that, and don't get me wrong, you're absolutely right. All of it is very, very serious, especially with a president with the lack of moral fiber that we've seen lately. I get you, Sumami. But I don't think it's the worst state. I think that people over-exaggerate just how, mind you, I'm an outsider. I got to admit, I will say that. But to me, it doesn't seem like it's the worst state it's ever been in. I think that we've come a long way since the days where, people could just employ people to bash union faces in.
I didn't say this is the worst state that we've ever been in. I said this is the most tenuous state that democracy in this country has ever been in since the Civil War. And that's absolutely true. Democracy
no, that's fair.
As a tenet of our what our government is about, yes, it's absolutely in the most tenuous state that it has been in since the Civil War. We are failing to prosecute a then sitting president for an insurrection attempt. That is fucking unbelievable. We are
I gotta agree with that. Yeah,
basically the big lie to be perpetuated in our country, so that there's a huge percentage of people that believe that the election was stolen. And and honestly, the only reason the election that was stolen was the one that placed Trump in office, because he literally colluded with Russia to get into office. I don't think that our country has faced a situation where we're looking at the literal crumbling of democracy like we have in the last, 5 years. We have neo-Nazis that are now actively fucking protesting right out in the open next to fucking Disney World. Like, they don't have any shame at all. Like, this is... I think this is a very different time period than, like, I don't know, what we've
I think the pendulum of, like the status quo, if you think of the analogy of, like, society's like a pendulum and it swings one way and then the other, I think the goal of the status quo is to keep the pendulum where it's at as much as possible, and and if it does move, to move it in a strategic, directional way. And I think that the sensation that, like, you can feel today is that, like, the forces that have kept the pendulum kind of in place since maybe even like the 80s, like economically and everything, like, I think more and more people, there's more of a push on the pendulum from all sorts of different sides. And so that's sort of the tension that people sense, is that, like, whether it goes more to the left or to the right, like, change is coming one way or another more and more than it has been, say, for the last 20 years.
But I mean, it's such a small minority that you're saying they're just insanely vocal. Like, I mean, I don't. What amazes me is how few people vote in the US. Like, it's so low voter turnout. It's incredible. It blows me away every time.
Because we take for granted our ability to vote, and too many people have bought into bullshit that they read on social media, or that some gullible schmuck has told them your vote don't matter. It don't matter if you vote. Blah 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 blah. Like, people
I think in a lot of ways
eat that shit up, and then they'll sit on their ass, not vote in their local elections, much less the national elections, and then they want to continue to run their mouth about how the government works and what we should be doing, but they don't want to do anything to actually change that.
Well, I think at the end of the day, a reason for that is that with the two-party system in America, unfortunately, no matter who's in power, really, the status quo mostly stays the same. Things really don't change because you have the broader left, the broader right, and
that's such a cop out, though. That is the immediate cop out that people buy into, and then they don't want to they sit at home and they don't vote. You absolutely have the voice to change. If you go and vote in your local elections, if you want to run in your local elections, if you want to start a grassroots campaign and fucking launch yourself to be a politician, you absolutely have that capability in this country. And there's not that many other countries that you do. Like, that's bullshit. That's constantly what people do in this country, especially in our age group. And this is why so many of us sit home and don't fucking vote.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's the fault of the politicians. Like, look, 2008, we had financial collapse. We had a very unpopular Republican president. We had a landslide election for Barack Obama, who had talked about fundamentally changing the U.S. economy. He talked about universal health care, single payer. And then as soon as he got into office, he abandoned all those. He really didn't push for any of it.
I don't think he did. It's just, as president, you don't have the power to do that. That's the thing. Like, you've got to understand that the president doesn't have the power to change all of that. You have to get these policies through the House of Representatives and the Senate. And while the Republicans are sitting with a controlling majority in the Senate, nothing like that is going through.
So the first maybe a year of his presidency, he had a solid House majority. He had a 60-seat majority in the Senate. The Republicans were powerless to stop anything. Okay, what happened is his chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, came out and told the insurance company, look, we're not really going to push for single payer. Yeah. We're not even going to push for the public option. This is what it's going to be. Okay, he surrendered.
Yeah, they're telling them we're keeping the pendulum still, you know.
He surrendered before they even fought. And the thing is,
that's not necessarily Obama. That's his part. Like, you've got to separate the person running from president from what the party's doing. Because even if Obama wants to get something like that through, if his own party won't back him, it's not going through. He doesn't have the power to change that.
President is the leader of his party, and when he wants to fight for something, he can fight for it. Now, if he doesn't care and he's not going to fight for it,
he's not the leader of the party. What are you talking about?
In the political system of America, the president is the leader of his political party. I mean, that's just political science.
He has the most impact for sure. Yeah. I think maybe Mark is thinking like who's like the CEO behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like, who really dictates what ends up happening? And I think
look at how much political capital. Look at how much political capital he had when he won that election. He was the most popular president in a generation. He could have pushed harder for some of these things. He didn't fight for it. He didn't want to. He didn't really want to reform the banks. He really didn't want to break them up. And so we're going to have probably in the next few years another financial crisis.
So he wasn't. So okay. So I don't think the president is the president the leader of the party, or is it the House Democratic Caucus that has the lead? Like, who is in charge of the party?
You mean in terms of the House? Okay, the Speaker of the House, if it's a Democrat, but in terms of for political science purposes, the president is considered to be the leader of his party. It's not like but if the party statutorily.
If the party decides not to back the you can't make them. Right, you can't make somebody like the. I mean, usually it's the whip that goes round. I'm not sure if you guys have a whip, but
we do. We do.
Yeah, he's usually the one that makes sure everyone's voting correct. But if the party establishment is not backing the president on a certain, he can't make them vote the way that he wants. That's just not freaking possible.
He can exert political power. He can call congressmen up and say, "Hey, listen, are you going to support me on this? If you're not, then I'm going to support your primary challenger in the next election. I will go out there every week and campaign against you if you don't support me on this." And I mean, if it's an issue that's that important to you, you will fight like that. I look at the crazy stuff that Trump was able to get done in his time that it seems crazy, but he was able to do it shrewdly. Trump never had the political capital or mandate that Obama had when he took office. Obama ran as a very progressive president, but he governed from the center, and he didn't really push for a change.
And that's that status quo kind of bias, right? Is that, okay, we're going to get in there, but we're going to keep things essentially how they were yesterday, right? And I think that's what people are building on.
I mean, he did get the Affordable Care Act through. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that he did get. I mean, more could have been done. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but
I think politically that was a horrible move. That was the Affordable Care Act. I think politically was very bad. It really made no sense because he burned so much political capital on that. Okay, he lost the Congress because of it, because the Republicans fought him tooth and nail on it. Okay, and what did he actually get? He made the current system suck a little bit less, which, if anything, what does that do? It lessens the need for real reform. So it's a half measure, and those are so dangerous politically because you forestall the need for real change by making the current system more tolerable.
Yeah, but it just feels like you're sort of saying, well, he didn't manage to do like this amazing change, so he shouldn't do any change. He made the system suck a little less. It's like, on one hand, you're sort of saying he should have changed the entire thing. And any attempt to change anything, like he had to fight tooth and nail to get that through. Could you imagine?
How it was beautiful, right? Like it was going to be revolutionary and get a lot done. But the issue is that so I think I agree with James here on this point, is that if you're going to make the headline, we're doing something incredible and we're going to put all the capital and everything into making stuff happen, and then you supplement that with an incremental policy, then you need to either follow that up with, here's the roadmap that gets us to what is revolutionary, or you either have people who completely disagree with you, which I did at the time. I've changed a lot politically in the last decade growing up. But whenever it came out, I was I thought it was the worst thing ever, but it's not even that different. And so then it's some people still think it's the worst thing in the world. And whenever it's just half an inch away from what it used to be. So I think that if you're going to burn the capital of saying, here's this big deal, then you need to implement something that's big enough that there's a wide enough gap there that, and then is successful enough that people would cross that gap, if that makes sense.
Well, go ahead, Chris. We've been talking for a while.
I try and give, it's hard because I certainly have my problems with them, but I try and give politicians, but especially something at the level of the president, a lot of grace, because I reckon it's a very difficult job. It's easy to sit here and say, here's how it should have been, and here's how it could have been. And,
sure.
And one thing is, listen, if you don't talk big, you're not getting elected. So you have to talk big. That's part of it. You just have to. There's no way around it. You can't say, well, I'm going to go in.
Biden didn't really talk big, but he was running against Trump, so he didn't really have to. But
but you can't. Let's say, generally speaking, you can't go, well, I'm not going to do much, but I'm not going to break much either. That's not going to get you elected. But but I imagine it's very hard. And I think I really do think you have a lot of very well-intended people that go into politics. I can only speak for the U.S. and they find out that their optimism doesn't match with reality. I know I've served on the board in different organizations, and I've been the president of some of them. And I remember kind of my first time in the game and just being so optimistic about the change I could bring and what I can do. And I had ideas I thought were great, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But the reality hit of what actually happens in any sort of political realm, which is you have a balance of keeping the peace within your own people, and that's a part of it, and also then implementing the change, and also radical change can cause radical results that aren't always good, and so there's any president who comes in, and I'll leave Trump out as an odd exception because I just don't really understand him personally, but comes in and I think generally they love their country. And I'm not saying Trump didn't, by the way. I'm just saying generally they love their country. They want to do good for the people. They want to implement change that they think will be for the better. That's their ideal. And then there's a
Trump
lot of
loved a country. I'm just not sure it was the US.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know Trump, but again, and they're met with a reality of what you can actually accomplish versus what you really would love to do. And I think we just, again, I'll just say for me, so I give them a lot of grace and say, hey, listen, we're really looking at human beings that gave it their best shot. Certainly you have tyrants that slip through the cracks. That happens probably everywhere. And, again, everyone's human. So do politicians lie? Of course they lie. Every human being I've ever met has lied. Do politicians make bad decisions? I've never met a human being who didn't make bad decisions, including myself. Do politicians sometimes put their own well-being above the well-beings of the country? Probably. They're human beings. But I just try and show them a lot of grace. And I'm really grateful to live in a country and in a time where I can generally be free, and where I can generally, not that I completely or explicitly trust the government, but I can generally trust the government. Whereas Sumami brought up, I have the right to vote and I'm able to have a voice, no matter how small it may feel at times. I have my voice. And so I just, just in this conversation, I just feel it's important to stress that, these are hard jobs. These aren't easy decisions. And I'm talking about me personally, only me. I'm really good at armchair quarterbacking and being like, here's what should have been done, could have been done. Here's what I would have done. But I just know from the little experience I have, until you're living in those situations, it's really hard to know exactly all the little minor details that are going on. No one, of course, I'm a Christian, so I believe but God, I'll say, but no one is truly sovereign, and so there's just, again, so with Obama and I think he sticks out as a candidate to me because I think he was so optimistic. I really think he went in going, man, we can make this change. If I remember correctly, I'm not sure, but his platform was change, right? I think.
Open change.
Yeah, and he's like, and I think he went in with this optimism. He was green, right? He was young, and reality probably hit him pretty quick that it doesn't quite work that way. Not that he didn't have some political experience, he did, but if I remember correctly, he didn't have a whole lot.
I want to push back on something to say. I mean, I get that
Absolutely.
you're in a position where, and don't get me wrong, I think it's great you're in a position where you're safe and you're free and all of these things. I worry that not everybody's in the same position. And I don't think it's good enough when you have sort of these laws coming out that target minorities. Because even though I might not be in a minority, I wouldn't find that acceptable towards me. So I don't think it's good enough to say, hey, I'm in a place where, I sort of, I'm free and I have my thing and I'm not accosted in the street. But recently we had a guy a journalist who I used to respect I do respect, called Stan Grant, quit because he was getting too many racist threats and stuff. And that isn't good enough, right? That isn't good enough that he has to put up with that in my country. Like, so it doesn't matter if I'm not getting these threats and I'm doing okay and I'm free and I get to do all these things. If there's people who don't have the same opportunities that I do and the same sort of an equal basis in life to live their life, then that's sort of, it's my responsibility, I see it, to talk about that and say, hey, that person needs to have the same position I do. It's not good enough to say, hey, I'm okay, thanks, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize.
No, that's okay.
I gave that impression. I'm not saying it's good enough, and I'm not saying, hey, I'm good, so we're good. So I really do apologize if that's the impression.
No, don't apologize. It's fine. It's just I'm
saying,
clarify. That's okay.
I'm saying when we look at people on the individual basis, we say Obama, we say Clinton, I think we see a bunch of human beings who, for the most part, I'm not saying all of them, who for the most part were sincere and wanted to do well for the country, wanted to represent their country well. And again, tyrants, I'm not saying tyrants don't get through. There are tyrants, but I don't think that's generally what we see. Again, speaking here in America, I think we see well-intended people with who just hit a reality that there's only so much they can do. And I'm not saying let's be satisfied with that. That's certainly not my position. And at least for me, in my personal Christian worldview, that doesn't cut it. But I'm just saying that I try and approach it with grace and understanding that I could at least say for me, it's true that I probably couldn't have done much better. So it's easy for me to sit and criticize and say, well, this guy did this and this guy did this. And again, I'm not saying there aren't tyrants. There are tyrants and we call them out. But for the most part, listen, these guys gave it their all. It cost them quite a bit. You just literally look at a president when he comes into office and 4 years later, and the aging is incredible. I mean, you could literally see the wear. And so I just approach from a thing of saying, hey, I'm going to have grace and just as much as the system is flawed, we all know it's flawed. On the individual level, going, hey, here's a guy, and I'll just pick any one of them. Here's a guy in Obama, and he did his best to do what he thought was right for the country. On some of the things I may not even have agreed. I don't know, but I may not have even agreed were right for the country, but he believed they were. I really believe he did. And again, I'm not just speaking of Obama.
I think he was a sincere person.
I think most of them are. Again, I'm not denying that there are tyrants that come in, but I think most of them are sincere. They really are doing what they believe is best, and they're really doing it to the best of their ability, and it comes at a great toll to them that they're really sacrificing quite a lot, even though we may look at it and go, what's a position of power and privilege, and that's true, but they're sacrificing quite a bit. I couldn't do it. I know that. And so the point I'm just trying to make is I always, as we have these discussions and think about what could have been done better, that we always approach it with grace and mercy and truth, that hey, here's some human beings that did the best they could. And again, from my worldview, I thank God for them because they're doing a job that I really honestly believe I could never do.
I totally push back against that. I totally refute that. Look, Australia's different. Like Australia, if the Prime Minister's on the street and shaking hands, someone will literally go up and call him a dickhead. Like that has been caught on film before, right? This whole worship of presidents, I don't understand, right? This is the thing. Like you can't treat this person like there's some kind of God-given thing that they've got to be responsible for what they do. Like anybody in any other, you're right. Like anybody in any other job. Why is it that on one hand you'll have a CEO, which is a very difficult position, very hard to do. They get a lot of prestige, a lot of compensation for that, a lot of power. They're held accountable. They have to do certain things, and if not, they're held accountable. But the president just gets a free pass because they got a whole job. Where else in the society do we have this? You've always got to.
Well, again, I'm
okay. Sure.
I'm poorly expressing myself. I'm not saying they get a free pass. That's not what that's not what I mean to be stating. I don't give them a free pass. I don't give.
You're right. You're right. And sort of so you sort of say that you sort of give them the benefit of the doubt kind of thing, and
like a charitable kind of interpretation of where they might come from. I think
that you can. I think you can acknowledge that they're doing their best, but I don't see why you have to be graceful about it.
And they can do the best for them too. Also, they can selfishly do the best.
I'm not suggesting you have to. I'm saying that's how I approach it. So I'm not suggesting.
No, I get you. I just.
Do.
I think it's more a cultural thing. But like sort of Australians just go, the Prime Minister's just this bloke, and if he acts like a dick, we're going to call him a dick. Like they've been removed before. Because
again, I agree. If Trump has committed crimes, and I'm not suggesting he hasn't, indict him. If Clinton had abused his power to gain advantage over women, call him out. I certainly believe that. Those tend to be moral failures, or that's how I would view it, right? Moral failures. So Trump, we're looking at some criminal activity.
Right.
And they may have abused their power. And again, and Trump may qualify when I say tyrants do slip in. But I'm saying politically and how they did their job, I'm not saying they did it particularly well. I'm just saying I approach it from a standpoint where I honestly don't believe I could have done much better. And so So I'm not saying they're above reproach. I certainly don't believe that. I just try and look at it from a perspective of they're a human being, and I believe for the most part they did their best, and that doesn't absolve them from any guilt if they've committed a crime. That doesn't absolve them from any moral failures, and it certainly doesn't mean that we can't have a high standard of expectation for them to do their job well. I'm simply saying that there are definitely more dynamics to their job than when we look at armchair quarterback. We're seeing part of the picture, and not the full picture, I believe. And so again, it's just my approach, and I'm certainly not suggesting that anyone else has to approach it this way. I was simply just sharing, and maybe it's just not the appropriate place for it, but I was simply sharing my personal
that's fine.
Viewpoint.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Look, Disciple, just because I disagree with you, you don't have to agree with me. Like, I can fully disagree with you, and you can absolutely disagree. It's not like I'm gonna go, you disagree, how dare you? No, that's fine. We can disagree. That's cool.
I don't look at it as like when I comment on Obama, I'm not commenting so much on him as a person. I'm commenting on his political strategy. I don't think he did the right strategy, because especially with the healthcare thing, because like how hard did he fight for that? How much political capital did he spend? A lot. But the Republicans have gutted most of the provisions of the Affordable Care Act. They've gutted several of them, and they have paid zero political cost. It hasn't cost them one seat, hasn't cost them anything, because not enough people were even benefiting from these provisions. They were so tacit and so just ancillary that they really didn't affect people's lives enough to get them to cause that outrage. And I think if he had pushed harder and he got a real program, maybe with a public option, once people got to go with their lives without being beholden to these insurance companies, you would never be able to go back. If anybody tried to repeal that, they would be voted out of office in a week. If we had real reform, like a public option or a single payer system, we didn't get that. We got this system that still keeps the insurance companies in control. And by the way, they still lobbied against it. They still funneled millions of dollars into candidates to oppose it, even though he designed it so that they would still be in play. He did all that.
And you pointed out what I think is the main problem in politics in just about any country you can name, is the amount of money in politics from private companies and private individuals, and the amount that money controls who actually gets in and who doesn't get in. I think that is the worst thing about any political system in the world today. Well, I mean, apart from theocracies and stuff, which are obviously doing horrible things, but certainly in the American system.
Look, when they came up with the Medicare prescription drug benefit for the elderly, okay, that was George W. Bush in, I think, 2005, and that had been something that the seniors had been wanting for a long time. The cost of medication was killing them. It was really a big problem. And so this was a landmark piece of legislation that gave them at least some coverage. But the thing is, tucked into that bill was a rule that prevented the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services from engaging in negotiation with the drug companies the way that private companies do. So if you have United Healthcare, they talk to the drug companies. They work out deals like, okay, we're willing to pay this for that. We'll pay this for that. It's not the same price that the pharmacy lists that they actually pay. But the government couldn't do that. They basically had to say the drug company says this is the price. The government is just stuck with it. If they say $30 a pill, $30 a pill.
No, the worst is insulin. Do you know the cost of insulin in the US versus Australia? This blew my mind. Like, so in Australia, it costs $6.94 to buy a shot of insulin. In the US, it's $98.70.
Yeah, and
I remember Bernie driving like an hour away from where he was at and into Canada, and he got it for 1/10 the price. So yeah, it's the I think to build off what Disciple Day is saying, for sure, like people can be thinking like I'm helping like moving things in the right direction and still engage in things that move things the wrong direction at the same time. And so when people like when there's a lobbying system, right? Like this just kind of, as Mark was saying, like the money ingrains what the goal is it's like a business is run for profit based off of the goals of the shareholders, whereas a business without shareholders could be public interest, or community interest, or fill in the blank, right? But it's all dictated by the people who get to lobby that one clause that says we get to charge $30 a pill. And then now, even if we did something that on the whole gives old people more medicine, we've now locked ourselves into a scenario where that's got a trade-off where we can't. It's like we've locked in the status quo, and that pendulum that we keep trying to move more to the left or more to the right. Like we lock it into, well, no matter what happens, it's at how much they say it's worth. And so now, even if we move it to the left or right, like that stipulation, the same. It's like the casino logic. It's like the house is going to win every time.
It's like what Tsumami was saying about people voting, and this is a perfect example. So if you look at the California legislature, it's dominated by Democrats. They can basically do whatever they want, right? In the Republicans have almost no political power in that state. Now, while Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor, the California legislature 2 or 3 times, if not 4 times, passed single-payer health care bills for the state. Each time the Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger vetoed them. He vetoed them every time. Okay. When Arnold Schwarzenegger left office and a Democrat was in office who said he would sign it, well, guess what? They can't get a bill out of the legislature. The Democrats in the legislature kill it. They were willing to do it when they knew it would fail. But when they actually had the power to do it, they backed off. They would not do it because they were never serious about it in the first place. It was just to appease people, just to make people think they wanted it. When they actually have the power to do it, they don't.
Yeah, and I think so I agree that like politicians should always oversell something, right? Like they have to promise the moon to get you halfway there. And so I think over time, like I've heard this argument, I have no opinion about it, of like there's like this 80-year cycle within societies, like typically of like, I think sort of the fact that people think that we're going to move towards something better and life still stays more and more like it was yesterday. I think at a certain point, there's like that dissonance between the two. People get fed up with it. And that's where figures like Trump or, some of these more provocative, less status quo, more let's shake it up. That's where that builds in capital. It's where a hope and change, like on the Democrat side, we can phrase it that way. And people really were begging, for hope and change. And then if we just move it a little bit and we sell it as like, we got all of this done, but then it only takes a few years to unknock all of that progress. It's like, what really happened there?
You fought for nothing in the end.
Right. And so, and ultimately it's moved more to the opposite direction. And so I think people are more willing for, say, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene sort of figure because they've just noticed that like they always oversell it and it never happens. So why would I go with someone who gives me those words and phrases it that way? And back to the like how they package it kind of thing, like all of those, the norms that we assume like are good politics, I think slightly change as people are more resentful of those norms.
Now, 2008, I didn't vote in 2008. Now, 2012, I voted for Obama, and I stand by that, even though I'm critical of some of his policies. But I think he was the better choice versus Mitt Romney. And I think overall, he did a lot of good things in his presidency. I wish he would have pushed harder on some issues. But obviously, he's a very smart man, very intelligent. He did lots of good things. I think his heart was in the right place. I think he wanted to do things to benefit the country. Maybe there were some things he couldn't do because he just couldn't, that he would have liked to do. And I think that's with every president. But yeah, we've got.
I think one thing that's certainly the case we see in politics and everywhere is that money plays a big role. I mean, I don't think anyone would deny that, though maybe. And we talk about lobbyists and the challenge with healthcare and pharmaceuticals and all those things. It's money. It boils down to, and I think, again, from speaking from my worldview, is we can't just naturally, or I don't know how to put it, but count on people just to do what's good and right either. And I'm not saying this in contrary to what I said about the presidents. I'm just saying, this kind of idea that everyone just wants the good for everyone may not really pan out. And it turns out that quite a few people are more concerned about their own good. I seem to see that quite a bit. And so we run into problems like, well, it would be best maybe for the most people to do this, but that doesn't seem to happen. And the minority in control of things seems to have a different agenda at times. And again, I'm not talking about presidents. I'm just saying, in general, the way things work. I think many months ago there was a conversation about this, and we kind of came to agreement that greed, and I'm just using the term generally speaking, not even talking about some sort of biblical idea, just is a real thing. I mean, we know people who would sell out almost anything for money, and that problem persists regardless of government structure or geographic location. It seems to cross cultures and generations, and it's at the heart of some of these problems that, unless there's a solution for that problem, the other problems just continue. And I even, to some degree, sympathize with some of the pharmaceutical ideas, because you have some diseases that are really awful but affect a very small number of people, and to invest a ton of money into helping those people comes at your own loss, because if you're not going to sell the drug at an exorbitant price, you're never going to recover your investment. I don't know enough about it to truly say, I guess, but it does seem to be the case. My dad died of a rare illness, and his medication was astronomically expensive. And part of my understanding of that was, well, it's not like we're going to sell this drug to billions of people. And so to recover the investment we made in the research and development and testing and all that's required to make a drug, which is beyond the scope of my understanding, is to charge a price that's going to be quite high.
I think just to jump in there for 1 second, like a lot of pharmaceutical research is done through public funding, and then those benefits, through like NIH grant research. That's one example where the National Institute of Health will fund grants that then conduct research that leads to medications. But also there's a lot of times where like Operation Warp Speed, where it's the opposite direction, where the public money goes into what then does get sold for profit by those companies.
Yeah, certainly there's that support. But that, again, the premise I was starting from was greed. And so while that may satisfy the one end of plain recovery, which I'm not even sure that's totally the case, but I don't know enough to speak on definitely. But, there comes in the issue of making money, which again is just a reality. The pharmaceutical, whoever it is going to want to make money, but the balance requires the good of the person who owns the property. So Pfizer. I don't know anything about Pfizer, but I know they make drugs. At least that's what I think. I can't count on them to do what's morally right. I would hope I could. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that expectation. I just know we can't. And I'm not talking about Pfizer particularly. I don't want anyone to think I know nothing about Pfizer, but I'm just saying I don't think, historically speaking, just going on history alone, I could say, well, I can count on them to do what's morally right versus what is financially beneficial. Because sometimes those two things come at an odds, I think.
Well, I mean, you have to consider. So Mark was talking about some of the pharmaceutical prices in his country and in other countries. And, the thing is, they have access to the same drugs we have, right? There's not drugs here that they can't get over there because they don't make enough money on them over there. So the pharmaceutical companies, they'll play ball with Australia. They'll work with their pricing arrangements. They will make sure that they can get. They will get.
They don't have a choice.
Need. And on the other side, they just say, well, I guess we'll just raise the price in America then because we need to make a profit. So it's making the American people
they make a profit. They make a profit from selling it in Australia, or else they wouldn't do it. That's the thing. They still make a profit, but the profit's reasonable instead of an insanely outrageous amount of money that
make a lot of profit over here.
Right. Well, and there's no reason why they have to make that. And they tell people, oh, it's because we do research into drugs, so it all goes back. No, it doesn't. It goes to the shareholders. Don't fool yourselves.
100%. I agree.
They make an obscene amount of money off the backs of people that need drugs, and I don't see why people just take it. They just go, oh well, that's the way it is. No, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, I hate to rebel rouse, but there's no reason it has to be that way. The government can say, hey, this is the amount of profit we can sort of expect you to make off a certain thing, and that is a reasonable amount, and sort of it's crazy how much they make.
Yeah,
I agree. So I managed a institutional review board for a little while, which is at a university, where they do the research and stuff, and or research proposals come through and whatnot. And so just that's built off of something called the Belmont principle, which has 3 principles. One is public beneficence, because before that, whether it's Nuremberg or stuff, there's a lot of research that was done on the backs of serfs or, the very least of society, and the benefit only went to the top people. And yet, like what Mark's describing is essentially that same scenario, which is we're paying for the research of the medicine that then we ship to Australia at a reasonable price. But if you're a poor person in America, you might have helped fund the research, but you don't get the pill,
I think, at least from what I'm hearing, I think we're agreeing in the sense that I don't think the problem is the system. I think the problem is greed. I think the solution can be found in the system. In other words, I think we could say it doesn't matter how greedy you are, we're not going to allow it to occur. But I don't think the system is the problem. I don't think the system dictates you must sell it for this much in the United States. I think the system could offer a solution. In other words, if we came up with a good solution, we would solve the problem. But I think the root of the problem is greed.
I don't think so. I think I saw a documentary called Saving Capitalism, right? And it was a guy who was a capitalist and sort of a person in the system. And how do we save this system? Because it's rapidly heading towards people not accepting capitalism anymore. Because for most it works, for some it doesn't. And more we're seeing that the gap where it's not working for a lot of people. And he was sort of a proponent of capitalism, but the problem is that companies put money into politics. They gain power by putting money into politics, and they use the politics and the political system and the legislative system to make them more money. And then, that more money, they can put more money back into politics. So it's this cycle of them using the money to get power and using the power to get more money.
Right. So
and no one's kind of to blame for that, right? Here's the thing. Nobody is we can't look at this thing and say, hey, these people are just being greedy. They're not.
Like, if you look at a company, they have a legal obligation to make the maximum amount for their shareholders. That is their legal obligation. They're not being greedy. That is what they're required to do. So we built this system, this capitalist system, that all it really does is provide a way for capital to buy power and power to make capital. And that's the problem. The problem is that system.
Yeah, in capitalism, so the price is going of a good is going to be the highest amount people will be willing to pay for that product. So if people are willing to pay $800 a pill, they have no reason to just come in and say, oh, well, I mean, we could still make a profit at $100, so we'll do that. No, their duty is to make profit for the shareholders. If you can get 800 for it, you get 800 for it. People will pay it.
Yeah, that's where that worker cooperative in whatever South American country that went solar. Now energy costs less, and because they're for the public benefit, right? They lowered the price of everyone's electricity bill. When would that ever happen in many first world countries, right?
Yeah. And sort of, so being able to step in and say, hey, we're going to, and I know libertarians hate this, but the idea that the government steps in and says, hey, this is what the government should be for. They should be able to step in and say, hey, for the good of the people and the country, we have to limit this, or we have to regulate this. That's what it should be there for. But the problem with money in politics is that if you can determine what the policy is going to be by the money that you're putting into it, that will never happen, because the people you give money towards are not going to risk that money in order to make those kind of changes. I mean, who's going to alienate? Bernie is just about the only person I see alienating, big business, but he's funded by small individuals. That's how he gets by. But, that's only one person. Nobody's going to alienate big business from any of these political parties, because that's who's basically allowing them to get into power and who's providing them with the means to carry out their job. And so the question must be asked, if you're, getting all of this money through your party, and your party decides where they're going to place you and whether they're going to run you, and whether, are you then responsible to the people or to the party?
Right. Well, so look at, for example, Hillary Clinton in the early 90s when she was first lady, before she was a politician. She came before Congress and proposed a single-payer health care bill. And she got derided for it. The Republicans attacked her, but she still came forward and made that proposal. After she became a politician, started raising money from the insurance and pharmaceutical industries, she had a change of opinion on that. She was no longer for single-payer. Right. She was for this Obamacare type half hybrid public sort of funded system, and that was after she got a lot of money from the industry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and she goes on to do public speaking things for big business here and there, and so you've got to ask, if she's getting so much money doing these public speaking engagements and this was the problem when she ran, like her links to big business and getting money from them. There is no possible way that cannot influence your decisions in politics. It's just impossible. I get why Trump was voted in the first time. I kind of get that. I mean, I think it would have been better with Hillary, in hindsight, but I totally understand why it happened, because she's awful. She takes so much money from the big business.
Well, the thing with that is that what would have worried me so much about a Hillary presidency is she is very, she's became more of a pro-war candidate. I think if she had been president, I think we'd be engaged in Syria right now in that civil war that's going on. And I don't really think that's our place to be in Syria, or be in Libya, to be in Egypt.
Would maybe be in Afghanistan still, like at least Trump put in the levers that then Biden could pull and get us out of that, and
right. I don't think Hillary would have done that.
Yeah, the instant he came down the escalator, all my friends are Bernie bros, like where I'm at, right? But the instant he came down the escalator, I was telling him, okay, Trump's winning. I know it. Like I just called it. And I was saying, this is going to turn the dirt. Like I see that on the right and on the left both. Like there's a huge change on the stuff that we're talking about now where these sorts of conversations happen, which is that if Hillary would have gone like into office, the mainstream media would have supported her. The right would have said this is BS, and it would have been just like before. I think Trump is a unique person who has like allowed it so that both now on the right they're having their fight and trying to determine what are we going to be, and they have different sides. And I think the same thing on the left. And Bernie was at the time like sort of an early, like there's already the Bernie wing versus the establishment wing on that side. And I sort of see similarities on the right side. And I think that it turns into maybe in 20 years, like it'll be like more of a libertarian versus a progressive kind of fight. But the ultimate difference there and what changed is this big money and the motivation behind the people. Like someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think she's wild. I don't agree with a single thing she probably has ever said. Hardly.
She does say some crazy shit.
But I think that what gets her there is the fuel for getting stuff out of the money people. Like she's not. I don't know if she's as easy to buy off as say a Hillary Clinton, right? Like for even the NRA, maybe. Like I think she's probably more of a wild cannon. Like do I think she agrees with the NRA? Yes. Will she fall in line with them? But I'm saying like I can see both sides starting to derail from the money aspect as more kind of wild cards get in there who are going to be like Bernie and fight for what they think rather than take the bid. Not necessarily that fits the people who are there now.
Well, somebody like Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris, those type, I don't think they actually believe in or stand for anything. I think they base everything they say and do and advocate for on whatever is politically expedient. If it's popular, if it polls well, they'll be for it. If not, they won't. They don't actually take a stand for anything. They don't actually fight for anything.
Right.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Yeah.
I've got a quick question for the panel. Apologies.
What is your question?
Hey, Ultimated. Good to see you. Sorry, forgot about you there.
Thanks. Well, firstly, thanks for having me in. My question: when are we debating the logical contradictory title of this video? Shortly.
Well, this isn't a debate; it's a discussion for a start. So there's no debate on really. We can disagree, but there's and I'm not sure I would sort of agree with your characterization that it's a debate.
I'm going off the private message I sent to the panel.
What private message?
Within this StreamYard chat.
Let's see. My connection tanked. Yeah, Sumami, I gotcha. Hi, the title of this video is likely a logical contradiction. If ye wants to debate this, then please allow me in.
Yeah, so whoever allowed me in, I'm this.
So nobody wants to debate you on it. I don't think. Does anyone want to debate Judeo-Christian on this topic?
I mean, not a formal debate. We could discuss it now if he wants to discuss it, but it's not a formal debate.
Yeah, it's not a debate. So nobody wants to debate you on it, I guess. I mean, as much as I like to mass debate, I don't think I can debate you on this one.
I think you're metaphysically dodging my debate request for the panel.
Thanks,
you don't have to participate.
How am I metaphysically dodging? I don't understand that.
Because you claimed that nobody wants to debate, but then you asked a question. So you did contradict yourself.
That's based on evidence. So it's based on like nobody sort of agreeing to debate. Like I asked very clearly if anyone wanted to debate you, and nobody said yes. So that's the evidence that I have for that.
But you claimed it first before you asked the question. So your question was contradictory.
No. I said I don't think anyone wants to debate you, as in that is what my belief is. And then I asked the question to confirm that thought, right? When I said I don't think anyone wants to debate you, I asked the question and then nobody said yes. So that was my evidence that my thought was in fact right. If you want the timeline of,
I think he was right. It's like this is kind of more conversational, but I mean, I'd be down to listen to where the logical contradiction is.
Sure. I mean, if you want to have a discussion, would that be fine?
For a while, so we'll probably go like another 15 or 20 minutes, give or take.
Awesome.
Okay, that's fine. Apologies for the background noise. I am outside walking alongside a road with a lot of cars. So I just want to address a point by Mark.
I thought it was aliens.
So you made a claim again, Mark. So to address said claim is that from memory, you blatantly claimed that nobody wanted to debate me. Then you asked the question after said claim.
Okay, well, let's go back and see, because we've got it recorded. Hold it.
We can just debate now. You can look at the recording after this possible debate.
You want to discuss?
We're going to have we'll discuss it. But what do you want to say on the topic, Ultimated?
Well, on the title of this video, more precisely, is that the question is loaded. It's a contradictory question because God wouldn't create aliens on different planets. For Jesus died for those here on Earth. So the question, are aliens denomic, is a loaded question. So hence the contradictory logical title of this video.
I would say
so
that
who would have
that's not what
aliens?
we're saying. Yeah, we're not saying God created aliens on another planet. If they do exist there, they would have evolved naturally like we do. That would be our claim.
That's a claim because God wouldn't use evolution as a mechanism for the diversity of life.
Take the God.
I just watched it, and what I said was, nobody wants you to debate you. I don't think. Right? That's what I said. I've just watched it, so you're wrong again, Philip.
That's a claim because you said it tautologically multiple times.
Okay, let's back it up and show it. This is the problem with you. Like, people go and check you, and then when you're wrong, you just still, you still do exactly the same thing over and over and over. It's. I'm on Firefox. I can't do audio. Okay, well, like, seriously, go back and watch it. I said, and I've watched it back. I said, nobody wants you to debate you. I don't think. Right? That was what originally was said. So you're wrong. I'm sorry, you're just wrong.
Even if I were, I do have a legitimate excuse because there is a lot of background noise here. So I was
you may have misheard it. You may have misheard it. Sure. So can we get beyond that and go to wherever
we're not mad at you or anything.
No. It's just when you tell me that that's not what I said, and my mind says, "Hey, that is what I said." Indeed, that is what I said. Whether you heard it incorrectly is that's up to you.
I said it. I said that was a claim. So I didn't just say you said this word for word. So
well, that's a claim. That's a claim that was wrong. It was wrong.
That's a claim. So
yes, you made a claim of what I said, and you were wrong.
That's a claim. So I think you're metaphysically dodging my arguments.
So have you gone back and looked at it and basically said, yes, I am correct? Because I just went back and looked at it and you were wrong.
Your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal debate.
What's the fallacy?
This isn't a debate.
Yeah, we're saying that 100 times.
What's the fallacy? What's the fallacy? Tell me the fallacy.
It's an informal fallacy, as from my understanding, you are switching an informal fallacy.
Which fallacy? Like you've got formal and informal fallacies, right? And that's a list of formal fallacies and informal fallacies. But that doesn't tell me the fallacy that it is. So tell me the fallacy that I made.
As I'm about to say, from my understanding, you are likely, as I'm about to say, you're likely...
Well, just say it. Just say the name of it so I can sort of get a handle on what I've done wrong. So what's the name of the fallacy?
As I'm about to say, is that you're likely switching the subject to avoid the arguments that I laid out in regards to the logically contradictory video title.
You brought this up. You brought it up.
And you said we can, to paraphrase
I said I would watch
memory.
it. I said I would watch it to make sure my memory is correct, and you said, no, don't watch it. You can watch it later. And I said, no, I'm watching it now. And then I watched it. So you brought up this topic. You want to move onwards because I was basically going back and clarifying whether you were right and wrong. And I know you hate that, but that's what I did. And so in order to move beyond it, you brought this up. I didn't switch the subject. I'm on what you brought up. So if you want to drop it, that's fine. We can drop it. But then you say I'm doing a fallacy. You won't name the fallacy. You won't tell me what I'm doing wrong. You're just claiming it. And now that we're sort of like showing you, hey, where's the fallacy? There is no fallacy because you brought up this subject. So what now? What claims are you making about the title? And we can look at that.
You're making a lot of claims again. So firstly, I stated that from my understanding, you committed an informal fallacy.
Which one?
And to I've already explained in regards to you switching the subject, likely to avoid my arguments.
Okay, so that is memory. Okay, so that's called the red herring fallacy, right? It's where you bring up a subject that's not related in order to distract from the subject that is in front of you, right? That's the red herring. It's an
yes, you can say it's a red herring. Yes.
Okay, so the problem with that is I didn't bring up the subject, right? The subject of what I said was brought up by you.
And you addressed it, and to go off memory, yeah. It
can't be a red herring. It can't be a red herring for me because I didn't bring it up. You brought it up.
There's a lot of claims here by you, and I think you're interrupting me to possibly avoid my response in regards to your claim again. Is that to go off memory?
Why don't we just drop it? Because you said, hey, I might have misheard you. And so I can say, hey, that's acceptable. You misheard me. Let's drop it and go to what your actual problem with this title is. So what's your problem with the title?
Your question is an informal fallacy, as you possibly
Which
metaphysically red herring ploy. So can I get 10 seconds?
That up as well.
May I have 10 seconds without any interruption, please?
10 seconds, I'll time you. Go for it.
Yes, so okay, to go off memory, you said that you're happy enough to move forward, which I did. That's when I brought up the argument, and now you're going back to my original point.
Okay, so that's 10 seconds. Sure. I'd never left that original point. If you want to move on, we can move on. If you want to stay on this point, we can stay on this point. I don't see a lot of point in it, though. You know, I've basically gone back, seen that you're wrong, advised you that you're wrong. You can believe that or not believe it, as your choice sort of entails. But I'm happy to move on because you sort of said, hey, I could have misheard it. So I can accept that. That's fine.
But it's still a claim. So to go back to the argument... My argument still remains standing in regards to the logical contradiction of this video title.
Okay, so what's the logical contradiction?
Well, I'll paraphrase my argument. It's a loaded question, the title, because God wouldn't, pre-biblically and biblically, wouldn't create demons as angels or as aliens on different planets. But if you're referencing aliens as in foreign people, well then that's a different point. But I'm assuming you're referencing aliens from different planets, hypothetically or fallaciously. I yield.
So there's no. I think that the proposition, you're taking it as a debate proposition and not as a video title, because nobody here is, or very few people would argue that aliens actually exist at all. We're not sure that they do. So the problem here is you've misinterpreted this as a debate proposition when it is not, in fact, a debate proposition. It's a video title. It's something that is meant to be discussed. So if you don't believe in aliens, like I don't believe in aliens, right? Then that thing is to say, hey, let's discuss whether there are, in fact, aliens in the first place, and then discuss whether those aliens, if they do in fact exist, could be considered demonic. So you've completely misinterpreted the whole idea.
And it was an initial response to a theistic video where someone was presenting the argument that aliens are demonic. So we're just here really to discuss mainly from the contrary viewpoint, because I don't think anyone on here is accepting that claim. So yeah, we're just here as a panel, just kind of like chat about it and whatever else.
Yeah.
Really, but.
There's a lot of claims here. So my argument again still remains outstanding.
Okay.
I can
take it up with the people that made the video, not us then. Right? Because you realize that that's the title of the video that we watched, right?
Christians are saying they're demons. We don't believe in demons. We don't know if they're aliens. There could be, but we don't know.
That's a claim because deep down we know out of God's love, he would create his children here on earth.
That's a claim.
That's a claim.
That's a claim.
Yeah,
that's a claim.
Are you claiming that I claimed that you claimed it, or no? I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, but that is definitely a claim.
That's a claim, and you ask a loaded question. So I just gave a tautology for my arguments. So agape theism, God's love, doesn't entail the creation of aliens on different planets.
Okay, we'll take it up with the people that made the video, not us.
That's a claim.
Like, do you realize that we're talking about a question asked in the video, right? We're not putting that as a position that we are holding. That's just us referencing a video. Can we give him the link to the video? Would that be easier? Like, seriously, I feel like I'm talking.
But
yeah, okay.
I may not be able, I wasn't here long enough to know what you were. I didn't realize you were watching a video prior
You're
to.
You're speaking from ignorance? Color me amazed. Oh, I couldn't imagine. It's speaking from ignorance. I wouldn't. You know, I'd never have thought of you, honestly. Okay, so the video is called, okay, just so you know, the video called "Shocking Truth Behind Alien Abductions Discovered by Physicists." Okay, so that's their claim, right? The truth about alien abductions kind of thing, right? We're not saying that we believe that. We're just discussing it. I'll put it in private chat for you, the link to the video. So if you've got a problem with that proposition, go take it up with, what was his name? Vlad Savchuk. Because that's who made the video.
It doesn't matter that I was speaking out of ignorance, because by somebody titling this video in context to the video leaves an open target for apologists like myself. So my argument still remains standing.
Well,
if
first,
you want
that's
to,
a claim.
if somebody
I would
else
say that, like, if obviously it got you to click and to join in, so I would say that it's a successful title, and that's my claim, though. But I'm interested what you think about that.
Yes, if you wanted to get Judeo-Christian apologists to join, then you have succeeded with the title.
Well, I don't think it was for you particularly. I think it was just for anybody, really. Oh, was? Okay, well, I stand corrected.
We wanted him to come on. We were baiting him.
Well, there you go. So my argument still remains standing. Yeah. God exists, and he wouldn't create aliens for the aforementioned reasons. Supporting.
So what evidence do you have? That's a claim. What evidence do you have that God exists?
That's a claim. The evidence for God.
No. Yours is the claim. I didn't make a claim. I asked you what evidence you have that he exists.
You made a claim earlier, so
I didn't.
Evidence.
No, I didn't.
You did.
What about your claim?
Well, we've moved on to your claim, and your claim is that God exists. So what's the evidence that he exists? So I've made no claim about a God. What's your claim that God exists? Your evidence for your claim that God exists? Where is that? What do you have? What do you got for me?
Firstly, you made the same claim again. So to answer your question...
What claim did I make? What claim did I make? Just run me through what claim that I made.
You're making the claim that I'm asserting God into existence.
That's not a claim.
Something along.
That's not a claim. That's not a claim. I didn't claim that. I didn't assert that you claimed God into existence. I made no such declaration. I just heard you say that there is a God, and that is a claim. So what evidence do you have for that claim, first and foremost? Let's get that over and done with. Give me the evidence for that claim. We can look at it. I'm not asserting anything at this point.
Well, can I have 10 seconds? Like, I'm planning to be like 10 seconds with these.
No, you could, unless it's directly like linked to answering the question that I asked. No, because I've asked a question and you don't seem to want to answer it. So, like, let's look at your claim first, answer that, and provide all the evidence you need to support that claim, and then we can go on to other stuff. Okay, so let's do that.
May I have around 10 seconds to respond without interruption?
Okay. If it's on,
so you're making claims in regards to my statement that God exists. So to address your question, God's invisible attributes.
Okay, so your evidence that God exists is invisible attributes. Is that correct?
God's invisible attributes regarding the ontologically revealed ultimate finite polarity / dichotomy, factually grounding mindful intelligibility, ensuing epistemic universalism, complementing my pre-biblical syllogistic premise 1, categorically.
Okay. Now, did you intentionally leave metaphysical out?
Well, no, the problem is that he said it's been ontologically revealed, and ontological things can't be revealed, right? You cannot have an ontological revelation because ontological things are metaphysical, and you don't have access to metaphysical things. You only have access to the epistemology of them. So you've made a grievous logical error straight off the bat. Your whole idea that it's sort of mindful intelligibility, you have to show that God is responsible for intelligibility. You're begging the question by saying, hey, God is automatically responsible for intelligibility. You haven't demonstrated that, so you are in fact begging the question. So what evidence do you have that God is actually responsible for mindful intelligibility?
Yeah, just save your question because you're possibly metaphysically running from your claims. So
what claims? I haven't made any claims.
You have I will count 2. So the ontologically revealed part that you made a claim against, the ontologically revealed part, the first portion of my pre-biblical premise 1, the ontologically revealed ultimate finite polarity / dichotomy. So the dichotomy is what's been revealed to us ontologically / defaultly. So for us to know we are finite, we have to simultaneously know our opposite. God definitionally is the opposite to finiteness for us to identify finite things. Again,
that is not true. That is not true. Finite and infinite, yeah, they're not opposites.
That's a claim. I presented
No,
a
they're just
dichotomous.
not.
That's a claim.
Yeah. So this claim that you've made that sort of ontologically recreated ultimate finite foundation, there's no substance there. You've not said anything. So ultimate means that it is the foundational base level. So an ultimate finite doesn't really make any sense. That's sort of a contradiction in terms. Because if you have something necessary, it can't be finite. So I don't understand why you would make that claim, an ultimate finite.
There's a lot of claims here by you again. So I put forward
questions.
a dichotomy.
What's the two prongs of the dichotomy?
Ultimacy and finiteness. That's the dichotomy that I put forward. And from my understanding, you are objecting fallaciously to said dichotomy without properly justifying the claim, because...
So how do you know God's ultimate? Can you demonstrate that God is ultimate?
Definitionally, as he references...
No, not definitionally. No, not definition. Because I could define, my pen here as ultimate definitionally. That's not a demonstration at all. That's just a definitional sort of sidestep.
You've just contradicted yourself because a pen can't be finite. You have.
Sure, a pen's finite. Of course a pen's finite.
Sorry, a pen can't be ultimate. I misspoke there.
If I define it as ultimate, then it is.
That's your arbitrary claim.
Yeah, and your arbitrary claim is that God is ultimate. Can you demonstrate that God is ultimate without having to define it into existence?
You made a claim again. So God has demonstrated himself to be ultimate?
No. I've absolutely requested that you demonstrate your position, which you're not doing. You're just saying that I define God as ultimate, therefore he's ultimate. Well, that's great, but I could define, my computer is ultimate, so therefore it's ultimate. That your definitional word games just aren't going to cut it when it comes to logic, because you can define anything as anything Judeo-Christian. So it doesn't cut. When you say, okay, how do I know that God is ultimate? That, I've defined it that way. Well, great, but that doesn't mean that like definitionally, it means nothing. Literally nothing.
You're making claims again. So a computer can't be ultimate because ultimate...
Sure it can. I've defined it that way.
That's just a claim, because to be ultimate...
No, yours is just a claim. Yours is just a claim. When you say God is definitionally ultimate, that's just defining something. How do you know? What do you have evidence that you know that God is not just definitionally ultimate, but is in fact ontologically ultimate?
If you can type out your question, because I think you're metaphysically dodging your claim, my refutation to your claim of a computer being ultimate. Because definitionally, ultimacy means eternalness, absoluteness, all-powerfulness, etc. So a computer can't be ultimate definitionally. Only a personal...
No. Anything can be anything definitionally. You don't understand what definitionally means.
That's a claim. So
no, that's literally what you're doing. You don't understand. Definitionally, you can define anything as anything else. That doesn't, definitionally, like if you're meaning like logically or epistemologically, that's fine. But then you haven't shown God to be epistemologically or logically the ultimate. And that's what you're missing. So instead, you're just saying, hey, I definitionally do it, as in I define it that way. But that doesn't get you to where you need to go.
I have indirectly, epistemologically justified God's ultimacy definitionally, because...
Well, take me through your epistemology then. Take me through your epistemology of it.
Because a lot of dictionaries reference God to be indirectly ultimacy or directly?
Yeah, but that's just a definitional. That's just definitional.
What it means
that's
when
not.
we
Does
say
it involve
but
having sex with Yahweh?
That's an informal fallacy.
I
that
wasn't going to
question.
bring that up, but that is a good question nonetheless. I mean, we're talking about like God's best friends with benefits, right?
Yeah.
You asked to paraphrase. You wanted me to epistemologically justify God's ultimacy, which I have definitionally with dictionaries.
Yeah.
But I'm
so
addressing this
the
onto
definition is real.
Hey, I've got a question for you then. What is the difference between a definitional demonstration and an ontological demonstration, or an epistemological definition, say? An epistemological demonstration, sorry.
An epistemological demonstration would be the words in writing of the term God in the Bible, for example. Ontologically would be in regards to the innate knowledge that we have in our souls of God's invisible attributes.
Nope. Okay, so here's where you're going wrong. So a definitional thing is just people define things in certain ways, right? I may define a organ as something within my body and an organ as a musical instrument I play on. Those are the same word, two different definitions. So we can definitionally say that an organ is one of those two things. That's a definitional thing, right? They're both the same word.
Can you repeat those last 10 seconds?
So an organ, right? If I say an organ, I can definitionally make that to be something in my body that pumps blood or does some sort of function, right? That is an organ, right? I can also definitionally make an organ an instrument that plays things, like an organ in a church, right? Like an organ. Those two things are being definitionally made. That's the definitional sort of justification for each of those things. However, that doesn't make them what they are. So when we're talking about ontological, it is the metaphysics, is what that thing actually is. So if I sort of say an organ, right, the ontological truth is whatever I'm referring to, what it is in reality. Now, an epistemological demonstration would be, hey, I have this thing I'm calling by definition an organ. The epistemological evidence of it is that it has a number of chambers. It makes music. That is the epistemological sort of justification for me calling that thing an organ, right? And what it actually is in reality, what it actually is the ontology behind it.
From my understanding, your monologue is not a fallacious counter-argument to my pre-biblical premise one for the sake of this semi-formal.
It's not a semi-formal anything. It's just a discussion. It's not a semi-formal anything. We're just talking. I don't know why you just can't talk to people. Seems like a personal problem, but...
That's a claim. This is a semi-formal debate, like it or not.
No, it's not.
You are disagreeing. Yes, we have gone through this before. I gave you the definition of debate on dictionary.com.
We told you definitionally it was not a debate, though. So didn't we, by definition, set this ontologically and epistemologically so that you are incorrect per your claim?
That's a claim. If you look up the word debate on dictionary.com, it will come up.
I think a lot of the time, sort of Judeo-Christian, he kind of is really uncharitable and sort of covers it up with sort of a veneer of, well, I'm just going to stick to my thing. No, he's really uncharitable. Like when you sort of say, hey, we made this, so we made absolutely perfectly clear this wasn't a debate. We were just going to have a discussion. He wants to sort of really uncharitably take it. And it's kind of, this is why many people don't like talking to him, because of his lack of charity, his lack of understanding, his lack of giving you sort of, you know, when I just sort of went through all of the definitions that we're using, you just dismissed them. You just sort of said, that monologue that you put me through. I just took the time to explain to you how I'm using these words. I don't care if you agree with me or not. It's how I'm using them. So if you're talking about definitionally, God is something, right? God is an ultimate. Then all you're saying is that I'm defining that word like I wrote in the dictionary that is God. That's all you're saying to me. What I'm asking for is an epistemological, some evidence that is the case, right? That's what I'm asking for in order to believe your claim. So you can sort of say, hey, I'm not willing to provide that. That's fine. That's fine, right? Your claim is then empty and baseless to me. Do you have epistemological evidence that God is, in fact, ultimate?
15 seconds to address 4 points. This is a debate for the aforementioned reasons. I justify this epistemologically.
Oh my God! Here we go. No. We're about to fall back. We're about to fall straight back into the same cycle again. I have a question. Can I talk about the claim? Can I ask you about your claim that you have a relationship with Yahweh, a very special one?
Your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal debate.
Can you just answer the question? You have a very special relationship with Yahweh, correct? This is what you've alleged in the past, right?
Your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal debate.
Do you have sex with
We
Yahweh?
are entering the questioning phase of the semi-formal debate. I would like to hand it over to Sumami to ask questions to YouTuber Ultimated Judeo-Christian.
I second that motion. Thanks, Sam.
I would like 10 seconds to address 2 claims by Mark. So my pre-biblical premise 1 is an ultimate fact, definitionally, and I've already justified epistemologically.
I think you're metaphysically dodging my question about your claim about a sexual relationship.
Metaphysically dodging? Where did you hear that, Tsunami? That's some weird language you've got. Metaphysically dodging.
There's a lot of informal fallacies here.
Oh, I think this one's formal. To be honest with you, I feel very formal in making it. Actually, sorry, I should have worn my tux. I'm sorry.
My pre-biblical premise 1 is an ultimate fact. I yield.
No, it's not. I reject that. And the whole idea that sort of my level of requirement to sort of have evidence for something is epistemological. So I need to have some sort of justified reasoning to believe that Ultimated here's claim is the truth. So that's fine if he sort of states and claims that it's sort of ontological fact. He's not providing that epistemological chain of reasoning to get there, just saying a definition isn't good enough for me. So I reject that completely and sort of, I think everybody can see that he has no logical chain of reasoning. So I think while he sort of says fallacy and claims this, can't name any fallacies, I think we can move on to Sumami's question, because I just flat out reject it.
That's a whole bunch of claims. Your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal debate?
No, it's not. It's a formal question. You are being formally questioned in this semi-formal debate on a sort of hemi-formal area of my screen. So the question was, do you claim to have a sexual relationship with your God?
Your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal...
No, it's not. I'm actually looking to see your reasoning skills and to see whether you are making a claim that you have a personal relationship and therefore are biased towards this individual that you call a God. So in order to examine your bias... partner. Well, yeah, that would be a lot of bias. Like I would have a bias towards my wife because I am in a sexual relationship with her. Spoiler alert. So I want to ask you, are you biased towards God because you are in a sexual relationship with God?
Your question is an informal fallacy because if you want
to switch the question. So you can't answer the question.
That's a loaded question. So if I'm allowed
no,
to
it's just
get
a
10
question.
seconds.
Can you or can you not answer that question?
Your question, just save your question, type it out while I'll address your other questions. I'm addressing a question made by two people. So if you want to talk about my relationship with God, then you have to agree to God's existence, more precisely the God of the Bible.
No, I don't. I can just ask. Why can't I ask? Are you ashamed of your God? Are you ashamed to talk about your God? Why are you ashamed?
That's a loaded question. I'm not ashamed. I'm just sticking to the...
Then there should be no reason why you can't discuss it. I don't see a reason why you can't discuss it.
I said, if you want to discuss, to paraphrase, if you want to talk about
I'm discussing your claim that I'm just discussing. Do you claim to have a sexual relationship with a God? Any God. It doesn't matter which God.
Again, your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal debate because you have to agree.
The only semi is in my pants. Like, do you have a sexual relationship with a God?
Your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal debate because you have to agree.
It's not a semi-formal debate, though. We were just
definitionally it's not. Yeah,
that's a claim.
You're the one that wanted it to be a debate.
There's a lot of claims here again.
Question, my dude. You've alleged in the past that you have a sexual relationship with Yahweh. So we'd like to know more about that.
If you want to talk about my personal relationship with God biblically, then you have to agree verbally to his existence. Otherwise, you're possibly dodging.
What does
Why do I
that
have to agree to something's existence to ask you a question about your belief that you have a relationship with them?
My agreement will not change.
I'm not even trying to make fun of you or anything. I'm just asking, like, you've said that you have a sexual relationship with Yahweh. I'm genuinely interested. Like, what does that entail?
Firstly, it's not a belief, it's a fact. So if you want to talk about my relationship with God more precisely, then you have to agree to God's existence biblically.
Why?
Otherwise,
why?
Because
that's a fallacy. Why?
That's a claim. It's not a fallacy. Because if that's a claim,
it's a non sequitur. Because in order to talk about like evolution, for instance, right? You don't have to believe in evolution, right?
Well, to address your question, you do have to reference God.
You don't have to announce that you're addressing it. Just address it, kind of thing, right? You don't have to announce that you're addressed. Just address it.
I'm getting interrupted again. So for your question, I'm getting interrupted again. So if you're asking me a question about evolution, you have to reference God as the primary mover for the mechanism / motion of matter. But I said early on that God wouldn't use an evolutionary mechanism for the diversity of life. So you don't have to
believe in something to talk about it. So I don't there's no reason why we have to say we believe in a God to talk about it. Judeo-Christian. This is just you trying to trick people into, sort of accepting your God without the necessary epistemology to show what you actually believe. So stop with the tricks and you have to agree to what I've said. Why can't we just discuss a subject like reasonable adults?
We are, and again, this is not a belief.
Not. That's the thing. You're not. That's the whole point. You're not. You're saying you have to agree with what I say before I talk to you on this subject, which is sort of, an ultimatum. Maybe your name should be Ultimatumed Judeo-Christian instead, because you're making ultimatums on what we believe in order to discuss things with you, which is very dishonest, by the way.
It's like saying, you can talk to me about God, but you must reject God in order to do so. How would you feel if I did that to you?
So your question is an informal fallacy.
No, we'll answer the question.
A lot of...
If I said to you, you can talk about God with me, but you must reject God in order to do so, would you accept that?
May I have 10 seconds?
No, just answer the question.
Well, can I have 10 seconds first?
No, just answer the question.
Can you answer my question? Why?
Well, answer mine.
Why?
Go for it. No, you're dodging. What? You're dodging. Why would you talk to me if I said you can talk to me about God, but you have to reject God in order to do so?
Hang on, I'm not dodging. Save your question. Can I have 7 seconds?
No,
of uninterruption?
Just answer the question. No, just answer the question.
That's what I'm doing, but I'm asking for like...
No, well, you're not.
7 seconds.
You're dodging. Answer the question. No, you can't have 7. Just answer the question. Just go ahead and answer the question. That's it. That's all you've got to do.
Yes, but I'm asking first, am I allowed around 7 seconds?
No, you're not. No, you're not. Just answer the question.
Hang on. Can I have around 5 seconds?
No, you can't have 5. You can't have 2. Just answer the question. Just go ahead. You know, you've wasted more time just doing this little dodge session than you could have just answered it by now.
I'm trying to answer your question, but I'm asking for around 5 seconds.
No, you're not. You're asking for some time. Like, just answer the question.
Yes, I will answer your question, but I'm asking for around 5 seconds.
You could have answered it like 50 times over by now. This is the thing. Like, you are not interested in answering the question. All you're doing is dodging. So just answer it.
I'm not dodging. I think you're dodging my request of 5 seconds to respond to your question. You asked a lot of questions as well. So, I mean, if
just this one, like you don't answer one. That's the thing. You just dodge. That's all you do. And the times where we can get you to answer, you just go through sort of, you know, this whole word salad. It's crazy.
That's a claim. So you're committing informal fallacies to a semi-formal debate.
Okay, I'll allow you 5 seconds to answer. And if you don't answer it within 5 seconds, I'm going to call you a liar. Are you ready? Just tell me when you want to go.
You did. I was responding. I was interrupted again.
Okay.
What's your question?
Well, I'll give you 5 seconds. My question was, would you accept it? Would you accept me saying that you can talk to me about God, but you've got to reject God to do so? Would you accept that?
Can you shorten your question? If I'm only allowed 5 seconds?
Your time's already running. Your time's already running. 3, 4. Your time's up. You're a liar. You're 100% a liar. I warned you that I'd call you a liar if we got through that 5 seconds.
That's a claim. So can you shorten your question?
No, that's my question. It's a very simple question. Would you accept it if I said, would you accept my conditions if I said you can talk to us about God, but you've got to reject God to do so?
Can you shorten your question?
Ultimated, you have like a 8-page syllogism that you read out, but Mark's asking a 2-sentence question.
Everybody understands this question but you. Like, everybody. That if like, there is no other way that I can shorten this question. It is also already so basic a child could understand it. Like, it is so basic. Would you accept the conditions? Would you talk to me about God if you had to reject God to do so?
My clarifying question, have I only got 5 seconds to answer this question?
Yes, you've got 5 seconds. Yes, you've got 5 seconds. Just tell me when you want to go.
Well, I already utilized. I utilized my 5 seconds with the other question.
No, time's over. Time's over. This is a dodge. It's the same question, just worded slightly different so it's shorter. wow, you're done with your questions. You're done. You're 100% done. You've wasted time. You've dodged. You've ducked. I gave you the 5 seconds you wanted. You still didn't answer. This is nothing but a dodge. You're done. You're a liar.
That's a claim. You asked a lot of questions. You asked like 5 questions.
It's one question. And I repeated it 5 times, shortened it for you, spelled it out. Like, I don't, this is why nobody thinks that you're an honest person, because there's no possible way I could have made that question any more clear. There's no possible way.
But I utilized the 5 seconds for a different question. You asked like
care.
5 questions.
I don't care. You're dishonest. You're a liar. You refuse to answer questions, and then sort of try to. You're so uncharitable. You're so uncharitable. It's incredible. So when you trot out this long syllogism and sort of go on about ontological, recreated, ultimate, finite forms, like, you never will accept like making that shorter. You'll never accept clarifying questions. But when other people sort of request a simple yes or no question from you, you cannot be charitable. This is why nobody wants you on their platform and nobody will talk with you. That's why.
You're making a lot of slanderous claims against me, so you are losing debate points.
Oh, okay. Let me write them down. I'll get them in libel as well.
Ultimated. I have a question for you.
So, Sam, I haven't had anything. Could I just have one?
Go for
one question for Ultimated.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ultimated. So, like, I'm a classical Platonist, so if people ask me about my views, I can push them towards Plato. A lot of your claims about ultimate, they sound a lot like Plotinus and Aristotle's like forms and infinity. So I would just like to ask you, if someone was more interested in your ideas philosophically, who would you push them to read? Like, where could I get more understanding of your ideas? Because I don't understand your ideas from you.
There's a lot of claims in that question. So Platonic forms. Yeah, I think you're loading in these questions to possibly run from your claims. So if you can type out your question so I can address your claims.
I will apologize, Judeo. I was giving a lot of examples about myself. My question is, what author would you send people to get more understanding of your ideas?
Your question is an informal fallacy to a semi-formal debate. I'm assuming you're participating in this semi-formal debate as you have made a lot of claims.
He's asking you something, bro. He just wants to know. We want to learn from you. If we were your disciple, how can we get ultimated just like you?
Can I have 10 seconds?
Okay, go.
It was my question. You can have 10 seconds. Please go.
So, yeah, God definitionally is an ultimate fact, and we get this information from divine revelation. And there's so much more I could add to that, but you're forcing me to play this hand.
You passed the 10 seconds.
So that was
I'm sorry,
10 seconds. I appreciated your answer, but are you saying that there is no author I can go to learn more about your beliefs? I have to get it just from God.
What's the last word of your question? I missed that last word.
I just said, can I only get it from God?
Yeah, you get the divine revelation entails general revelation and special revelation. General revelation would be the ontological default knowledge we have of the revealed ultimate finite polarity / dichotomy. Special revelation has a lot of entailments. For example, the Bible. So epistemically, we know the God of the Bible exists, as he has made his signature onto theologically known within the first sentence of the Bible. So if you want to move on.
That ultimated. I have read the Bible. It is not used as like, there are apologists who write to help people understand the Bible, because the Bible is not very clear to a lot of people, and it's not very clear to me. So I can go to apologists to explain things to me. But you're telling me I can only get it from Yahweh. And so I'm just asking if there's any apologist, ancient, modern, who you go to get all these wild things about, like you're using forward slashes in your sentences. I can't understand that way, so I need to be able to read this where you're getting it. But you're saying you're not getting it from anywhere.
Any like philosophers or theologians who make the kind of arguments you're making, where you got your arguments from, or who might expound on it?
You can look to Matt Slick, Darth Dawkins.
Yeah, Darth Dawkins, I called it.
I asked for published authors. I don't think Matt Slick or Darth Dawkins have published their papers, have they? Am I mistaken? I'm not big on modern YouTube apologists.
I would say Matt Slick has, based off his website, he has got many books published. I'm not sure about Darth Dawkins, because I do remember...
No, he hasn't published anything. Darth Dawkins doesn't publish things. Philip, well,
that's the claim. You don't.
Well, if you can prove me wrong by showing me something he's published, then go for it. What has he published?
No, to paraphrase, that's a loaded question. To paraphrase, I said that from memory, because I said likely. So somebody asked that person if you have ever published presuppositionalism, something along those lines, and he or she said no, because, well, I can't remember exactly the response.
Do you worship he or the she same Yahweh that they do?
Your question isn't it?
Have you told Darth Dawkins that you have sex with God, and can I please be there when you do?
Yeah, I'm curious if, like, is it the same God, or do you worship a different God? Or, like, do they have sexual relationships? Or
I think it's just him, because he's God's best friend.
Your recent questions are informal fallacies to a semi-formal debate, because my pre-biblical syllogistic premise 1 still is outstanding.
Okay, I'd like to present an argument for our semi-formal debate. I argue that you worship a different God than they do because they don't have sex, but you have sex with your God. Can you present an argument as to whether or not you agree or disagree with the whatever thingy debate that we're starting?
Semi-formal.
Semi-formal.
Forward slash.
I'm assuming... I'm assuming that the panel has fallaciously self-proclaimed to be atheistic. So if he wants to talk about God, you have to accept my argument.
I'm accepting your argument to walk into a semi-formal debate with you, Ultimated. I am coming in as charitable as faith as I possibly can, and I would love to hear your response to the argument I presented.
Oh, that's your first mistake, Sam.
I'm just trying.
Well,
I know. I've been here before, though, mate, multiple times. Like I've been through this again and again and again. It's easiest just to reject.
It never goes anywhere. You just go around in circles.
Yep.
So if I could, so it sounds like your core philosophy. It's so hard to get down to, like, you know, giving us a word, is presuppositionalism. At least that's what I see Matt Slick stands for. So would I read presuppositional philosophy to understand your viewpoint, or would that not be a good area of school? What is I need your, like, philosophical understanding of Christianity.
The Bible and dictionaries, God's revelation.
And dictionaries are not philosophy. I'm saying, like, they're apologetics. They're apologists who have a philosophy. Like, when it comes to metaphysics, you need a philosophy for your metaphysical belief. Materialists have a metaphysics that everyone here, besides me and you, are materialist. So they have a metaphysical belief with a word. Is yours presuppositionalism?
You made save your questions, type out your question, because you made a lot of claims again. Dictionaries and the Bible do have philosophy in them, as by definition, philosophy would be in regards to wisdom.